What's going on, guys? I'm Bert. I'm here with my 2016 BMW M2 and I'm doing a video just talking about maintenance on this car. So I've owned this for just about 1 year exactly now, and I've spent a lot of money maintaining it and I've spent money repairing it because things have actually broken on my M2. So I'm doing a video kind of going over all those costs, kind of from when I got the car all the way to my most recent service. Alright, so let's start breaking down all the costs for my 2016 BMW M2. So I bought the car, like I said, about a year ago with 57,000 miles on it. Now the first actual service I did on the car was at 59,862 miles, so essentially 60,000. Now in that service I had my brakes checked for a pulsation. I had my battery checked for a drain problem. I'll go into that in a little bit. I did an oil change. I did spark plugs. I did manual transmission fluid, differential fluid, a coolant flush, and a brake flush. And all of that came to $1,835.41. I'm just going to round everything to the nearest dollar just to make it nice and easy. Now, to touch on the brake check and the battery drain issue. The brakes, I had a pulsation in the brakes from warped rotors. I ended up changing that later. I'm going to get to that. But the battery drain issue. So I have a whole video dedicated to that. But essentially what happened was when I took delivery of the car, they replaced the battery before shipping the car out to me because I had this car bought out of state and then I had it imported into my state. And when they replaced the battery, they never tightened the cable down to the IBS sensor. So I, for the life of me, could not figure out what was wrong with my battery or my car because it just kept draining, or at least I thought it was draining, and I just could not figure out what the issue was. Turned out the cable just needed to be tightened, so I am going to remove $400 from that service for that because it was about $400 for the diagnostics because I had to leave the car for a couple days. How no one found out that the cable was loose except me like months later, no idea, but that's what happened. So essentially you could say $1,435 for the whole service minus all the diagnostic stuff, you know, for the brakes and for the battery issue. About a day later, I had to replace the coolant cap and bleeder screw on the coolant reservoir. So when they did the coolant flush, I guess the pressure was just enough for it to crack the cap. So I had to get a new cap and a new bleeder screw. The reservoir and cap are a common issue on the M2s and a lot of BMWs actually. Unfortunately, it happened to me. It is what it is. But that one came to $115.22 to kind of diagnose what the issue was and then replace the coolant reservoir cap. Could have done it myself at home, but again, I wanted to bring it there to diagnose it because the car was there literally like a day ago for all the other stuff. So now at 60,500 miles, emission test, $20 if you really want to count the emissions test. At approximately 63,000 miles, I replaced the front pads and front rotors. Now, I have another video kind of reviewing them, but I went with Zimmerman rotors and Akebono pads. Now, I bought these parts off FCP Euro for $787. That's for both rotors and for the pads. I had my private mechanic install them for $150 he charged me, so $150 installation and $700 something for the actual brakes. Now 64,000 miles more or less, I did an oil change and I did a rear light repair. So another common issue in the 2016 BMW M2s is the ground wire inside the taillights can actually burn out. It can't handle, there's one wire and it can't handle all the current that goes to all the light bulbs. So it'll actually melt like right at the pins, burn out, and you have to replace like the whole backing. You have to rewire the pins, and it's a bit of a pain, so I just had the shop do it. So that was on my passenger side that happened. So those two things was $280. And then an extra $100 for the parts. So it's about $30 for the new set of ground wires from the 2017 BMW M2 and about $70 for the new backing to the light housing. Now at 67,000 miles, my driver's side rear light went out. So exact same issue, except instead of that side, it happened on this side. $122 for the repair and another $100 for the parts. And then at 69,000, we had an oil change. Finally, a service that's literally just a simple oil change, nothing fancy. $157.30. And the only other thing I forgot to mention was in my initial big service for the 1800, alongside that, I spent like another $50 on air filters. So the engine air filter and the cabin air filter. I did both of those myself. So that is pretty much all the money I've spent either repairing the car or maintaining the car. And that's going to be it for this one, guys. It's not really that long of a video. It's kind of a quick one. Like I said, I've owned this car for 1 year. I have had to replace things. I have had to fix things. And I've spent a considerable amount of money maintaining this car. Now, the caveat to this is my big stuff was right when I bought the car. Like the spark plugs, all the fluids, like all that big stuff. That's something you do generally every like 30,000 miles. It's not an every single service kind of a thing. So really, you could just count my oil change for $157 as kind of the standard service cost, and then like filters. So $200 to $250 is probably about what you could spend on just general maintenance for this car on like a normal year. And then every like third year, you could factor like $1,500 for the bigger stuff like fluids, spark plugs, stuff like that. But that's gonna be it for this video, guys. So if you enjoyed it, leave me a like, leave me a comment talking about your M2 service and repair maintenance history. And that's gonna be it for this one. So thank you guys so much for watching. Till next time.